Cats and dogs, a rivalry steeped in history, known to many as one of the most famous. They frequently find themselves in conflict simply due to their instincts. However, when a group of thieves kidnapped this young girl, an unexpected duo joined forces to rescue her. This story happened quite a few years ago in a small and remote village situated in the middle of a dense forest. Alice, a 16-year-old, had spent her entire life in the village alongside her mother and grandmother, both of whom cherished and cared for her deeply. They'd all shared their home with a beloved cat named Badger, who had been a part of their family since his kitten days. Badger's journey into their lives began when Alice's grandmother discovered him seeking shelter from the rain under a small shop awning as a tiny kitten. Overwhelmed by compassion, she decided to bring him into their home. Since that fateful day, this ginger cat had proven himself to be a more formidable protector of their household than any guard dog, weighing in at a hefty 18 pounds. Badger wasn't a tiny kitten anymore. He had grown big and looked quite scary. He protected the house from things that didn't belong and caught mice to keep the place clean. Badger liked spending time in the forest, and nobody knew exactly what he did there. Alice's grandmother thought he might be hunting because he always came back full and happy. Every summer, Alice's mom went to work for a week, leaving Alice with her grandmother and Badger the cat. Alice enjoyed this time because she could play with Badger as much as she wanted. Surprisingly, Badger liked spending time with Alice too. One summer, Alice was helping her grandmother in the kitchen when Badger walked in with a small gray puppy walking next to him. Alice turned to her grandmother and asked her when she had gotten a dog, but her grandmother replied that she hadn't and that her favorite feline was the one who had brought it home with him from the forest. The grandmother had seen the puppy hanging around the edge of the woods and said that it must have worked up the courage to finally come into the house. It turned out that one day, Badger had gone off into the forest like he usually did, only this time when he came back, he was carrying a small gray bundle in his mouth. At first, the grandmother thought nothing of it, as the ginger moggy often brought his hunts back home with him. But when the cat released the bundle of fur, the grandmother was surprised to see that it was alive, and it turned out to be a puppy. At first, upon seeing the woman, the puppy ran to the edge of the forest. Now that the canine was finally up close, though, the grandmother was able to take a closer look at it and instantly recognized that it was actually a wolf pup. Lots of questions went through the grandmother's head. Where had this cub come from? Where was its mother? And why had Badger brought it back to the house? Unfortunately, the cat couldn't give her any answers and just sat happily next to his new friend. Alice was ecstatic over the fact that she now had a new pet to play with. At first, her grandmother was hesitant to let the young girl near the wolf, but she soon came to realize that even though it was a wild beast, the cub behaved extremely friendly. Badger treated the canine with a lot of tenderness, which was unusual for the cat, as he usually tried to scare off any other animals. But now the feline was gently licking the cub's fur, letting him lick milk from his bowl, and even bringing his hunts back for the cub to eat. The two animals even slept together curled up on the same bed. It was like Badger had decided to become the new mother for the little wolf. Meanwhile, Alice's mother had found a new house to live in and had decided to take her to live there at the end of the summer. She told Alice that she would be able to spend the rest of the summer with her grandmother as Alice's mother got the house ready to live in. While Alice was sad to be leaving her grandmother, she was also incredibly happy that she would get to spend more time with the wolf cub. As the summer went on, the cub grew noticeably bigger and stronger. Alice became very attached to him and found it difficult to leave on the day that she was to go to her new home. Alice's grandmother told her that the young girl could return a month later, and they would spend a weekend in the forest picking mushrooms together. As Alice got onto the bus to take her to her new home, the wolf and cat began to chase after it, and Alice's grandmother started to cry. It wasn't long before a month came and went, and it was time for Alice to return to the village for her weekend with her grandmother. But as she prepared to go, she learned that the bus she usually took wouldn't be able to take her all the way to her grandmother's village this time. Seeing that she had no other option, Alice decided to walk the remaining distance to the village. She gathered up her backpack, which contained all of her clothes for the weekend, and started to walk along the road. Luckily, the weather was good and the sun was shining, so the 2-hour walk would be quite an enjoyable experience. As she walked, Alice admired the beauty of the forest around her. She had never really taken the time to look at it closely, and she loved what she saw. At one point, she saw an unusual-looking bush just off the side of the road. Curious, she went over to take a look at it. Just at that moment, a car sped by on the one side of the road that Alice had been walking on. Had she been there still, it surely would have hit her. Thanking fate that she hadn't been on the road, Alice then noticed that the car had stopped and was reversing back towards her. At first, the young girl thought that it was possibly someone from the village who was going to offer her a lift. But as the car approached, she noticed that there were two men inside, and she did not recognize them from the village at all. Knowing that her situation wasn't good, she was all alone in the middle of the dense forest. Alice decided that she would try to negotiate with the two men. They both seemed tipsy, so it might work. Sadly, though, it didn't, and Alice was pulled into the back seat of the car by one of the men. Alice was so terrified that she froze. She couldn't move. The men drove a few miles until they found a quiet spot to pull over. Once the car had stopped, Alice was pulled out of the vehicle. She started screaming, but she knew that it was in vain, as no one could hear her. As one of the men approached her, the young woman slapped him across the face, making sure to use her nails to hurt him. The man got so angry that he pushed her away. Using this as an opportunity to escape, Alice quickly regained her footing and began to run away. It was at this point that she heard one of her attackers cry out in pain from behind her. Startled, Alice turned around to see what had happened, only to find that the wolf cub she had grown so attached to was now a fully grown wolf, and it was biting down on one of the men's arms. That was when Badger appeared from the forest and jumped onto the second man's back. The unexpected weight caused the man to fall over. The angered feline then began to scratch and bite at his face and neck. Alice was overjoyed. Her friends had somehow heard her cry for help and came to rescue her. After the guys got the animals off them, they sprinted back to their car. But the car wouldn't start because the two attackers were still inside. They didn't want to deal with an angry wolf again. Alice called the police to tell them what had occurred. After the police handled the two men, Alice went to her grandma's house. They spent the whole weekend gathering mushrooms with Badger and the wolf. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this story. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.